Okay, so we saw yesterday that there are certain things that once they're peeled, like an onion or garlic or an egg, once they're peeled, they should not be left overnight. But that's only if they're by themselves, intact by themselves. Okay, but that's the last thing we learned. But if it's mixed with other things, of course you can keep it overnight. And furthermore, these things are not prevalent anymore, and the Shulchan Aruch doesn't bring these things. Al-Kain Afteroi Lachush, and therefore the Imrei Yaakov had said, even though certainly these are things that if you have the ability to be mindful of them, it's a good idea to avoid them. But Avol Vadai De'in Limchos Biyad Hamikilim, there's no reason to protest those who are lenient in this regard, because many people say that Shadim, this evil spirit that could rest on these kinds of foods, no longer even exists. So, yeah. Is there not a problem with it? Kashrus? No. The kashrus issue is what knife did you use to cut the onion? If let's say you used a milchik knife to cut the onion now is considered a milchik onion, and you should not use it with when cooking with anything fleishich, or even in a fleishich pot for that matter. So even though it's cold, because it's a davar charif, the onion is something spicy, and it absorbs the flavor within the knife, even when it's cold. So the only thing that you do need to do is label your onion that it's milchik or fleishich, right? And that's something that you have to be mindful of. But something that's a valid point. Yeah. Obeitza klufa, or a peeled egg. Yesh omrim shahakavana al beitza chaya v'lo b'mevusheles. He says, some people say that this is a reference to a raw egg. Now, how do you have a raw egg? I guess maybe you just cracked it open and put the contents in a container. Aval kama mechabrim kasvu da'adarabba hasakana hirak bebeitza mevusheles aval bebeitza chaya ein chashash. And other authors say just the opposite. It's only a hard-boiled egg and not a soft-boiled egg, or not a raw egg. Va'avkas beitzim yesh omrim de'ein lachashosh. And certainly with powdered eggs, the post can say you don't have to worry. Okay, I mean, let me just see. Okay. Sha'avar aleim halayla, that they have been left out overnight. Near the dafka imavar alehem laila shalem yesh lahakbid. This is only if a full night has elapsed. That is there a problem according to these people. That is to say that they were peeled before the onset of night, and then they were left overnight until the morning. And this is particularly true based on so many poskim who say that nowadays there's no concern about ruach hara resting in these foods, and therefore you only really would ever want to be machmir in a situation like this is if it's left out completely for a full night, from beginning of nightfall to the complete end of nightfall. And also a lot of even though he had said that even if you put it in a container, that it doesn't really help. He said, "Afilu imachupim b'chli barzel," even if it's covered. That was really referring to food under your bed. He said, "Afilu heim tsururim beveget," even if they're wrapped in cloth and sealed, the ruach hara could still get in. Well, what would he say about a plastic bag? Would a plastic bag block the ruach hara, the evil spirit, or will the Tupperware block a ruach hara? So again, all of this is so just ambiguous and really foreign to our way of thinking. And then the Rav Shulchan Aruch had said You should not leave any diluted beverage out overnight, and that's certainly true with water itself, provided that it was left in a certain kind of container, in a metal container. Is the part that's going to be problematic, and maybe it has to do with the lead issue. We're not, like Barry had suggested before. He says, "V'ha'olam ein nisharim bazeh." He says, but people are not careful about this. Umaisim b'chol yom shenishar mayim bedud de'avar aleim halayla. How often does it happen that water gets left into your dud? What is a dud? It's the water reservoir that's on your rooftop. Yeah, the dud abides. So the over aleim halayla, and night passes over it. Ve'ein shofchen osam lechutz, and we don't have to discard the water, right? So therefore, he says this is not a problem at all, right? Okay. 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 So, just see if there's any biurim. He just says in the Likutim, "V'imlo hiniach tachas hamita rak tachas mira'ashosav lekachshash." If you don't leave them under the food under your bed, but you just put the food under your head. Let's say you're out camping and you want to protect the food, and you put it under your head when you go to sleep. That's not a problem. And uvemitas akum kil Yisrael. Then he says something else. That putting food under a non-Jew's bed is more reason for leniency than putting it under a Jew's bed, because the Jews have bigger demons than the non-Jews. Okay. Again, all of this is... That's right. Shom kaluf, peeled garlic. He quotes a sefer called Tosefes Shabbos, or I'm sorry, this is a Gemara. This is the Tosfos commentary. Gam im humurusak v'nidoch ruach ra shora alav, even if it's pureed or crushed, an evil spirit can rest over it. Again, but that's only if it's by itself. If it's mixed in with other things we had seen before, that's not a problem. Like Costco garlic, it's mixed in with water. It's mixed with water. I think some of it is with water. Sometimes they put oil, sometimes they put water. Or maybe they put some other kind of preservative, like what is it? There must be some preservative in it. I don't know. Okay. Next, let's go to the next halacha. Lo yitain kikar lechem tachas hashechi mipnei hazeya. You should not put a loaf of bread under your armpit because of the perspiration. Now remember, okay, you're it adds flavor. You're going to the shuk, and you're you're going to the shuk, and you're carrying all this stuff home, right? And so where else are you going to put your baguette? Under the arm. Yeah. But he says, but that's a problem, because even, let's say you're buying it for yourself and you couldn't care less. But he says, Shekol zeyas ha'adam heimsam hamaves, because all human perspiration is poison. It's poisonous to ingest. Chutz mizeyas hapanim, except for the sweat on your face, which is considered to be less toxic than the sweat that comes from other pores of your body. And it must probably, because it's cleaner, maybe your face. I'm not. What? Well, you have to remember, when a person perspires, they're getting bad stuff out of their body. So perhaps that stuff is in the perspiration. So except for the sweat of your face, and he says, Simin ledavar b'zeyas hapecha tochalech. Yeah, but that's right. It's a different bacteria. Yeah, that's true, right? And so a way to remember that is God said to Adam, "You will eat bread by the sweat of your brow," which means, yeah. So apparently, there's no problem if the sweat of your brow gets into your bread. Below yitain another halacha. V'lo yitain ma'os b'fiv shema yesh aleim ma'adzeya. You can never put money in your mouth, like never put a coin in your mouth, right? Sometimes you may be tempted to put like a little piece of money just to hold it in your lips while you grab something with your hands. It says never do that because maybe they may have some human perspiration on them. The gam yad hakol mimashmeshes bahem. He says, and also human beings are constantly touching money. You don't know who's touched that money. It's like your mother talking to you now, right? You don't know where that's been. Don't put that in your mouth. V'yesh mehem cholim v'zu hamasam davka bahen. And there may have been sick people who handled the money, and the sickness attaches itself to the coins. Umazekes la'adam kishanos l'piv, and it'll injure you it'll harm you when you put it in your mouth. So it's almost like what they were telling us with COVID, right? V'lo yin od sakin v'sok esra gadol obetok snon shema yipol adam al chuda v'yamus. Another halacha that you're not allowed to do. Again, this is all very practical advice. This is no longer because of ruach ra'ah, of an evil spirit. This is because of really practical medical concerns. Here's another thing you're not allowed to do. Don't stick a sharp knife into a large citrus fruit or into a large radish. Now, why would you think you can't do that? And then leave it out. The reason why you can't do that is because if the blade is concealed, a person may fall, may not worry that they're just falling on a radish or on a grapefruit without realizing that there's a blade concealed inside that item, and a person could get injured. A person could get seriously hurt. Shema yipol adam al chuda v'yamus. A person may fall on the blade and get killed. In other words, don't conceal blades in things where a person may not know that there's a blade there. O shema yeshev aleha. Maybe a person will sit on it, not realizing that there's a blade concealed inside that object. Another thing, below yitain machat b'soch halechem lekelev. Don't put a needle inside of a piece of bread for a dog, shemafsidlo, that is causing you damage. In other words, let's say there's a bad dog in the neighborhood, and you want to take care of the dog. Someone told me that in Mexico, someone from Mexico told me that when they would put pieces of glass in chopped meat in order to get rid of the pesky animals. That was a way of taking care of the problem. Shema yishtageya v'yazik librios. Because the reason is because the dog may not die quickly. The dog may just be inflicted with severe pain, and that will cause the animal to go nuts and to really to do. Yeah. Elayitain lo sam hamaves ve'ein bo mishum tsar balei chayim kevin shemafsid lo. But rather, what you should do is give the animal poison. Whereas if you really want to kill an animal, you should poison the animal instead of causing it to die painfully, because poison will not cause the animal pain, and it's going to just, it'll just even shemafsid lo. It'll, I guess, put them to sleep. I'm not sure if that's the language. Okay, let's take a look at the Imrei Yaakov. Lechem tachas hashechi. Don't put a piece of bread or a loaf of bread under your armpit. Ve'im hakikar cham. If the bread is warm, after mafsikin begadim ben hashechi lahalechem asr mishum demezia harbe. Even if you're wearing clothing, and there's a lot of clothes, you have a coat on, right? But the loaf of bread is warm, then it's even more problematic because the bread will cause you to perspire. Aval bepas sonein davka im ein dover mafsik ben olav en beis hashechi davkim habeged hamafsik ein bozeya. He says, but with a cold loaf of bread, the only time it'll be a problem is if there's nothing to separate between you and your armpit, and also only if the armpit is not sweaty, would we say it's okay? But let's say it's a hot day and you're wearing a shirt, but you're schwitzing. So then that's also going to be a problem, even with a cold loaf of bread. And it's, yeah, certainly if the bread is wrapped in plastic, it's okay. But what if the bread's just wrapped in paper, like in the French bakeries? So then that's still going to be a problem if your perspiration gets on it. I guess maybe one of the things we have to learn from here is that even in the medieval world there was some level of recognition of hygiene and sanitary conditions for food, but it was not a developed knowledge of this. There was somewhat of a knowledge of it. We talked about money, not putting coins in your mouth. It can cause you real damage if you put a coin in your mouth that other people who are sick have touched. And here's another concern. The other concern is that you may swallow a coin, and that's really going to put you in sorrows. And for that reason, you should never put needles or small nails in your mouth, right? In other words, like the carpenter who wants to hold the nails in his mouth while he's hammering. Or the seamstress is going to put a needle in her mouth when she's sewing, because you may cause tremendous damage. Something could happen. Who knows? Someone tells you something shocking, and then you gasp, and all of a sudden something happens. Well, it seems like when it comes to issues that have to do with sakana, it's a universal thing. It should, the prohibition of not putting coins in your mouth is not just dangerous for Jews, it's dangerous for non-Jews also. So these halachas there doesn't seem to be any differentiation. You may just want to raise it with your seamstresses that, I just learned today in my legal religious class that a person shouldn't put sharp things in their mouth because you never know, it could endanger you. So just a word to the wise. They don't have to listen to you. They can do whatever they want. But as long as you've apprised them of your concern, like look, you've been in the business for many decades. I don't think you've ever had a problem of someone swallowing a needle or, but it may be good even for just insurance purposes, just to make sure that workers' comp, that you've disclosed to your workers that you don't approve of the practice, but you leave it up to them. Okay. He says, you don't want to feed an animal sharp objects because it may go wild. As Paul had said. The Kaf HaChaim in his commentary says there's also another reason for the prohibition, because of Tsar Balei Chaim. Masha Kosav Harav Behemshech Shemafsid Lo, Perish Shagorim Lo Hefsid Shemazik Umafsid Ma'acholim Ushar Hefsid. That what does it mean when it says that it causes a loss for the dog, meaning it causes Shagorim Lo Hefsid, that by causing this dog this kind of destruction, it'll cause the dog to damage, and it will eventually cause the dog to damage other things or create other damage. In other words, the dog is going to go wild if it's got this needle in its gut that it can't get out. And okay, I guess that's what the word matzit over here means. It's a little bit of a strange word here because then he uses it again. When it says giving the animal poison, there's no tsar balei chaim, since you are causing the animal to be completely to immediately cease to exist. But it's definitely a strange language. Okay, let us go to the next halacha. Lo ya'avor ish bein shnei nashim. A man, you've heard this halacha before. A man should not pass between two women. Now, why do you think that halacha was designed? So you'll see in a second. V'lo isha ben shnei anashim, a woman should not pass in between two men. Mipnei sheruach ra'a shora aleihem, because of an evil spirit that rests on that kind of configuration. Now, that's a very bizarre statement. I would have thought that it might be because of tznius or something like that, but that's not what the halach is based on. So if you look at the Imrei Yaakov, ish ben shnei nashim, a man should not pass between two women. The dafka im holech levado, but that's only if you're walking as a solitary person. Aval im yesh adam acher holech b'tzido b'shava les lamba. But if two men are walking between two women, that's not a problem. V'chein im yesh merchak ben hanashim daled amos shari. And furthermore, if there's 4 amos between the two women, then it's also okay. If there's women are divided 6 feet or more apart, so then there's no problem. And it's not clear whether this applies if the women are Gentiles or if they're only if they're Jewish women. And he says, and you should be stringent. Okay, but also one woman should not pass between two men. And what seems to emerge is that, ruach ra is sometimes a statement that is employed by Chazal to say that an activity is unhealthy or ill-advised because it could lead to something destructive. Like we saw, a person shouldn't sleep alone at night because of the queen of the demons is going to visit him, right, and cause him to have nocturnal emissions, right? Well, obviously that could also mean that person is going to have, sinful thoughts if he's by himself at night. Maybe this is of the same genre. It's not clear. Maybe. Right.
So that's what it's used for? Well, yeah, because if you think that it would exclude family members of committed
You would think so, but yes, right, yeah. That's a good question. Well, it's a good question. Okay, so when it comes to a lot of these issues of Ruach Ra, realize that, remember, we said that Ruach Ra was banished, evil spirits were banished from the Yishuv. So many people are not careful, just like they're not careful about leaving a hard-boiled egg in the fridge, okay? V'chein hakelev ben shnei bnei adam, o adam echad ben shnei klavim. And just to show you that this is not tznius related, right? A dog should not pass between two people, and a person should not pass between two dogs. Okay, there's no tznius issue over there. There's no perfume over there, but it's of a different nature. V'chein hadekel shel timorim, omrim af hachazir, v'yesh omrim af hanachash. And the same thing applies walking between two date trees, and some say walking between two pigs, and also between two snakes.
Rabbi?
Yes.
There's a reference in this halacha to Psachim, Kuf Yud Aleph. Is this an inyan of Zugos?
It could be an inyan of Zugos. It could be. I'm not really sure. It could be that when you have a pair of something, walking between them is problematic. And as we saw previously, Zugos no longer applies. There's no, even though the Gemara talks about the objection to drinking 2 cups of wine. In other words, you should either drink 1 cup of wine or 3 cups of wine. We'll go for the 3, huh? It's the same Gemara. It's the same. You're right, Gershon. That is where it's the same Gemara that talks about the Gemara over there talks about what justification do we have to drink 4 cups of wine? It's a multiple of 2. And the Gemara's response is, it's Leil Shimurim. It's the night of protection. God protects us from the evil spirits, and that's why we're permitted to drink the 4 cups. Okay. V'lo yeshev tachas marzev hayotze min hagag mipnei shemazikin mitzuyim sham. You should not sit underneath an eaves trough, which is a word I learned when I moved to Canada, because we call it a gutter in the United States. Yeah. You should not sit underneath an eaves trough because evil spirits linger there. Now, that could also be because, yeah, ice, you never know. I got a call yesterday, those new condos next to the fire station. There's an engineering flaw that when ice accumulates or snow accumulates on those very short sloped rooftops, they fall down in a huge crunch, a huge thing from the 3rd story, and a guy's car was underneath and it destroyed the roof. It just crashed through the roof. So there's going to be a major lawsuit, but first of all, don't sit underneath anything that could be potentially dangerous. Obviously, if it's ice outside, don't sit under your eaves trough. You never know when an icicle is going to break off. But I don't know if this is talking about Ruach Ra. It says that the evil spirits are lingering there. Below Ya'avor, al mei shofchim yachaf, ela in kain tza'adu va'avru aleihem samech tza'adim. You should not walk barefoot over spilled water. Mei shofchin is water that has been spilled out from, let's say, a trough or spilled out from an eaves trough. He says, unless it was already stepped upon 60 times. Again, this is all, medieval stuff. Osha avra aleihem zrichas hachama, or if the sun rose on the water, Osha pizer aleihem afar, or you sprinkled dirt over the water, Osha rokak aleihem rok, or you spit on the water. In all of those cases, if either the sun rose on the water, or you sprinkled dirt on the water, or you spit on the water, then in all of those cases, you may walk barefoot on this water that's on the pavement or on the ground. But if not, then you can't. She'im ein sham echad mikol elu ruach ra'a shora aleim. Because if you don't do that, there's an evil spirit that will rest on this puddle of water. V'lo yishon b'chatzer b'tzel levana shel kosel hachatzer. He says, nor should you sleep in a courtyard when there is a shadow that is cast by the moon by the walls of the courtyard. So by sleeping in those shadows, you are inviting evil spirits. He says, because demons, shadim, generally prowl around at night. And when the moon shines at night, the demons wish to avoid the moonlight, and so they will go into the shaded areas behind the walls. So if you sleep there, you're inviting evil spirits. You may also be inviting critters, raccoons, and all other kinds of dangerous things by sleeping out in the night when there's moonlight. There may be animals which seek to avoid moonlight. That's another consideration. In other words, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to provide rational explanations as to why these things may have been advisable to avoid. I think that in all of the previous examples, there may have been perfectly legitimate either medical or scientific reasons to avoid these things, because maybe disease in stagnant water, let's say, may linger. So you shouldn't walk barefoot because of malaria concerns or things like that. Who knows? Not sure how spitting would help exactly. I don't know. Ve'im halavana b'ma'arav, v'hu yashen b'tzeil hakasel b'mizracho, ein lachush. The only time you don't have to worry is if the moon is in the western part of the sky and you're sitting to the east of, as a time to go, to the east of the wall. That apparently is not going to be a problem because the demons will not flee from the moon in the western sky. Okay, we'll hold it here for today, and we will continue.
Thank you. Go ahead.